Danny Cole woke up to the sound of metal scraping against metal somewhere, deep inside the walls of Galactic Relay Station 7. He had been living on this station for 6 months now, and he still was not used to the strange noises that echoed through the corridors at all hours. The station was old, built by the Valorians over 300 years ago, and it made sounds like a tired old man trying to get out of bed. He rubbed his eyes and looked around his small room. It was not much to look at. A bed that was too hard, a desk that was too small, and a window that showed nothing but the endless black of space dotted with distant stars. But it was home now, at least until his assignment ended. Danny was the only human on the entire station. 37 Valorians lived and worked here with him, and not a single one of them needed to sleep, eat, or breathe. They were robots, but not like the simple machines back on Earth. These were thinking, feeling, talking beings made of chrome and circuits, and something that might have been a soul if you believed in such things. The Valorians had found humanity about 200 years ago. They had watched from a distance at first, curious about the strange soft creatures crawling around on a small blue planet. Eventually, they made contact, and now humans and Valorians worked together across dozens of star systems. Danny had signed up for this assignment because he wanted adventure. What he got was mostly paperwork and loneliness. He swung his legs off the bed and stretched. His back popped in 3 places, and he groaned. The Valorians had designed this station for beings who did not have spines that went bad or muscles that got sore. Everything was hard edges and metal surfaces. Danny had learned to live with the discomfort, but he never stopped missing the simple pleasure of a soft couch. The one thing he had managed to set up for himself was a shower. The Valorians did not need to bathe. They cleaned themselves with special sprays and cloths that removed dust and grime from their chrome bodies. But Danny was human, and humans got dirty in ways that required water and soap. He had spent his first month on the station, building a makeshift shower unit in the corner of his room using parts. He found them in storage and borrowed from the engineering bay dot. It was not pretty, but it worked. Hot water came out of a pipe he had connected to the heating system, and a drain he had installed in the floor carried the water away to be recycled. The Valorians had watched him build it with great interest, asking questions about why he needed to cover himself in liquid every day. Danny had tried to explain about sweat and skin cells and bacteria, but their optical sensors had just blinked at him in confusion. This morning, Danny needed that shower more than usual. He had spent the previous day crawling through maintenance tunnels, checking wiring that the Valorians could not fit their large bodies into. He was covered in grease and dust and something sticky that he did not want to think about too much. He walked to his shower and turned the valve. Water sprayed out, warm and welcoming. He pulled off his clothes and stepped under the stream, letting it wash away the grime from his skin. He closed his eyes and let himself relax for the first time in hours. The water felt good on his tired muscles. He stood there for a long time, just enjoying the simple pleasure of being clean. Back on Earth, he had never thought much about showers. They were just something you did every day without thinking. But out here, surrounded by beings who never experienced the feeling of warm water on skin, he had learned to appreciate it. He finished washing and turned off the water. He reached for his towel, but his hand grabbed empty air. He opened his eyes and looked around. The towel was not where he had left it. He must have forgotten to bring it over before getting in the shower. Danny sighed. The towel was sitting on his bed, all the way across the room. He would have to walk over there dripping wet to get it. Not a big deal, really. He was alone in his quarters, and the door was sealed shut. He stepped out of the shower area and started walking toward the bed. Water dripped from his body onto the metal floor, making small puddles with each step. He was halfway across the room when he heard a sound that made his heart stop. The door hissed open. Danny froze in place, completely naked and completely exposed. Standing in the doorway were 3 Valorians, their chrome bodies gleaming under the corridor lights. He recognized them immediately. Commander Zethis, the station commander, stood in the middle. Navigation Specialist Corinne was on the left, and Communications Officer Lysa was on the right. All 3 of them stopped moving the instant the door opened. Their optical sensors, which normally flickered with soft blue light, suddenly blazed bright white. The soft humming sound that all Valorians made grew louder, like computers working overtime to process something unexpected. Danny wanted to move. He wanted to cover himself, grab his towel, dive behind his bed, anything. But his body refused to cooperate. He stood there like a statue, water still dripping from his hair and running down his chest. The Valorians did not move either. They just stared at him with their glowing eyes, their metal bodies completely still. Danny had never seen them freeze like this before. Valorians were always moving, always doing something, their processors constantly working on a dozen tasks at once. But right now, all 3 of them looked like someone had hit their pause buttons. Seconds passed that felt like hours. Danny finally found his voice. "The door," he managed to say, his voice coming out as a squeak. The door was supposed to be locked. Commander Zethis did not respond. The commander's optical sensors remained fixed on Danny's body, scanning up and down like they were trying to record every detail. Corin and Lysa were doing the same thing, their heads tilting slightly as they examined him from different angles. Danny felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. He had never been so exposed in front of anyone, let alone 3 robot officers, who were now studying him like he was some kind of science experiment. He finally managed to get his legs working again. He lunged toward the bed, grabbed his towel, and wrapped it around his waist as fast as he could. His hands were shaking, and his heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "I am so sorry," he stammered, holding the towel tight with both hands. "I did not know anyone was coming. The door was supposed to be sealed. I do not know what happened." Commander Zethis finally moved, but only to tilt their chrome head to one side. When the commander spoke, their voice sounded different than usual. It was slower, like the words were having trouble forming. "Lieutenant Cole," Zethis said, "your door lock malfunctioned. We came to inform you of a meeting. We did not expect to find you in this state." "Yeah. Well, I did not expect you either," Danny said, still clutching his towel like his life depended on it. The 3 Valorians exchanged glances with each other. Something passed between them, some kind of silent communication that Danny could not understand. Then they all looked back at him, their optical sensors still burning bright. "We will reschedule the meeting," Zethis said slowly. "Please accept our apology for the intrusion." The commander turned and walked away down the corridor. Corin and Lysa followed, but not before taking one last long look at Danny standing there in his towel. Then the door hissed shut, and Danny was alone again. He stood there for a long moment, his heart still racing. Then he walked over to the door panel and checked the lock. It showed green, meaning it was sealed. But it had shown green before too, and that had not stopped the door from opening. Danny had a bad feeling about this. A very bad feeling. He did not know it yet, but his life on Galactic Relay Station 7 was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. All because of a broken door and a missing towel. Danny spent the rest of that morning hiding in his quarters. He sat on his bed with his face in his hands, replaying the terrible moment over and over in his mind. 3 senior officers had seen him completely naked. His commanding officer had seen him completely naked. He was never going to live this down. He thought about calling in sick for the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the week. But he knew that would only make things worse. The Valorians did not get sick, so they always found it strange when humans needed time off for illness. If he tried to hide, they would probably send someone to check on him. And that someone might be one of the three who had just seen more of him than he ever wanted anyone to see. Finally, Danny forced himself to get dressed and leave his room. He had work to do, reports to file, systems to check. He could not let one embarrassing moment ruin his entire assignment. He was a professional. He could handle this. The corridor outside his quarters was empty, and Danny felt a small wave of relief. Maybe he could make it to his workstation without running into anyone. Maybe everyone had already forgotten about what happened. Maybe the Valorians did not think it was a big deal. He was wrong about all of those things. As soon as Danny entered the main operations center, he felt eyes on him. Valorian eyes, to be exact. A dozen chrome faces turned to look at him as he walked through the door. Their optical sensors tracked his movement across the room, following him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Danny tried to act normal. He walked to his console and sat down, pulling up his work files on the screen. He could feel the Valorians still watching him, but he refused to look back at them. If he pretended nothing was wrong, maybe they would do the same. He was reading through a maintenance report when a shadow fell across his desk. Danny looked up to find a Valorian named Drix standing beside him. Drix worked in the engineering section, and Danny had spoken to him maybe twice in 6 months. "Lieutenant Cole," Drix said, his voice carrying a strange tone that Danny could not identify. "I heard about the incident this morning." Danny felt his face grow hot. "Oh, yeah, that was just a misunderstanding. The door malfunctioned." "Yes, I heard." Drix paused, his optical sensors flickering. "Is it true that human skin changes color when you experience certain emotions?" Danny blinked. "What?" "Commander Zethis reported that your skin turned a shade of red during the encounter. I was curious if this is a normal function of human biology." Danny wanted to sink through the floor and disappear into the cold vacuum of space. "That is called blushing," he said quietly. "It happens when humans feel embarrassed or ashamed." "Fascinating," Drix said. "Your body changes color based on your emotional state. We have nothing like this. Our exteriors remain constant regardless of our internal processes." Before Danny could respond, another Valorian appeared at his desk. Then another. Within minutes, he was surrounded by a small crowd of chrome bodies, all of them asking questions about what had happened that morning. Is it true that human bodies produce their own moisture? Why do humans need to clean themselves with water? What is the purpose of the small hairs covering your skin? How do you regulate your internal temperature without cooling fans? Danny tried to answer their questions as best he could, but they kept coming faster than he could keep up. The Valorians were not making fun of him, he realized. They were genuinely curious. They had never seen a human without clothes before, and apparently, what they had seen had raised a lot of questions. Commander Zethis finally appeared and dispersed the crowd with a few sharp words. The Valorians returned to their stations, though Danny could still see them glancing his way when they thought he was not looking. The commander sat down across from Danny, their chrome face as unreadable as always. "I apologize for the disturbance, Lieutenant. It seems news of this morning has spread throughout the station." "I noticed," Danny said with a sigh. "Look, Commander, I know it was awkward, but can we just forget it happened? I would really like to move on." Zethis was quiet for a moment, their processors humming softly. "I am afraid that will not be possible, Lieutenant Cole. You see, what we witnessed this morning has created quite a situation." "What kind of situation?" The commander leaned forward slightly. "In 10,000 years of Valorian existence, we have cataloged over 1 million organic species across the galaxy. We have studied their biology, their behavior, their evolution. We thought we understood biological life quite well." Danny waited, not sure where this was going. "But this morning," Zethis continued, "we realized that we have never truly observed a human." "Not really. Your species always wears environmental suits when visiting our stations. You are always covered in fabric and protective gear. We have scanned your bodies through these materials, of course, but scans do not capture everything. So what are you saying? Danny asked. I am saying that what Carr and Lysa and I witnessed this morning was remarkable. Your body, Lieutenant Cole, is unlike anything in our databases. The way your muscles moved beneath your skin, the way water ran down your form, the way your epidermis seemed to glow under the lights. We have spent the entire morning discussing it, and we still cannot fully process what we observed. Danny did not know how to respond to that. He had never thought of his body as remarkable. If anything, he had always considered himself pretty average. Not too tall, not too short. Not too muscular, not too thin. Just ordinary. With respect, Commander, I am not sure I understand. I am just a human. There is nothing special about the way I look. Zethus made a sound that Danny had learned to recognize as Valorian laughter. That is precisely what makes you so fascinating, Lieutenant. You do not even realize how extraordinary you are. The commander stood up and looked down at Danny with those glowing optical sensors. I must warn you that there will likely be more questions in the coming days. My report on the incident has already been transmitted to Valorian Science Division. They've expressed great interest in human biology, and your name has been mentioned specifically. Danny felt his stomach drop. My name? Why my name? Because you are the only human on this station, Lieutenant Cole, and because you are the first human that any Valorian has ever seen without artificial covering. Zethus paused. You have become quite famous, whether you wanted to or not. The commander walked away, leaving Danny alone at his console. He stared at the screen in front of him, but he was not seeing the words anymore. His mind was spinning with everything Zethus had told him. Famous. He had become famous because he forgot his towel. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work and whispered conversations. Every time Danny walked through the station, Valorians would stop and watch him pass. Some of them nodded at him with what seemed like respect. Others tilted their heads and studied him like he was a puzzle they were trying to solve. By the time Danny returned to his quarters that evening, he was exhausted. Not from the work itself, but from the constant attention. He was not used to being noticed. On Earth, he had been just another face in the crowd. Out here, he was apparently the most interesting thing anyone had ever seen. He checked his door lock 3 times before getting ready for bed. He was not taking any chances. One embarrassing incident was more than enough. As he lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, Danny wondered what tomorrow would bring. He had a feeling that his life on this station was never going to be the same. The Valorians had seen something in him that he could not see in himself, and they were not going to forget it anytime soon. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept returning to the way Commander Zethus had looked at him. Not with disgust or amusement, but with something that looked almost like wonder. Maybe there was more to being human than Danny had ever realized. Maybe the things he took for granted every day were actually miracles that he had never stopped to appreciate. Or maybe he was overthinking everything because 3 robots had seen him naked. Either way, Danny had a feeling that tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. 1 week after the incident, Danny realized that things were not calming down. They were getting worse. It started with messages. His personal communication terminal began receiving requests from Valorian scientists stationed across the galaxy. They had heard about the human on Relay Station 7, the one who had been observed without protective covering, and they wanted to know more. Some of them asked polite questions about human biology. Others requested images or video recordings. A few even asked if Danny would be willing to repeat the experience under controlled conditions so they could study. Improperly. Danny deleted all of those messages without replying. Then came the visitors. A Valorian research team arrived at the station claiming they were there to inspect the communication arrays. Danny did not believe them for a second. He caught them following him through the corridors, their optical sensors recording his every move. When he sat down in the cafeteria to eat his lunch, they gathered at a nearby table and watched him chew with expressions of deep fascination. The act of eating was apparently very interesting to beings who did not need food. Danny tried to ignore them, but it was hard to enjoy a meal when a dozen robots were studying the way his jaw moved and asking each other questions about the human digestive system. Commander Zethis did their best to manage the situation, but even the commander seemed overwhelmed by the level of interest Danny had generated. Every day brought new requests for meetings, interviews, and what the Valorians called observation sessions. Danny turned them all down, but the requests kept coming. His friend Clicks, the maintenance robot who had been assigned to help Danny with his equipment repairs, tried to explain what was happening. "You have to understand," Clicks said one afternoon as they worked together in the engineering bay. "We Valorians build ourselves. Every part of our bodies is designed, manufactured, and installed with purpose. We know exactly what we are made of because we chose every component." Danny tightened the bolt on the panel he was repairing. "So what does that have to do with me?" "Everything," Clicks replied. "You did not build yourself, Danny. You grew. Your body assembled itself from nothing but chemical instructions passed down from your parents. No engineer designed your heart. No technician installed your lungs. You just happened. That is how all biological life works," Danny said. "It is not special." Clicks made a sound that might have been a sigh if robots could sigh. "That is where you are wrong. Do you know how many organic species we have encountered in our travels across the galaxy? Millions. And do you know how many of them we have truly observed in their natural state, without protective covering or environmental suits? Almost none." Danny stopped working and looked at his friend. "Why not?" "Because most organic species cannot survive in our environments. They need specific temperatures, specific atmospheres, specific conditions that our stations do not provide. When they visit us, they must wear suits and helmets and all manner of equipment just to stay alive. We see their shapes through the fabric, but we never see them." Clicks moved closer, lowering his voice even though there was no one else in the room. "But you, Danny, you walked out of that shower with nothing on your body but water. And for the first time in our long history, we saw what a biological being really looks like. Not through scans or sensors or suits, but with our own optical receivers." Danny thought about this for a moment. He had never considered how strange his existence must seem to beings made of metal and circuits. To the Valorians, biological life was almost like magic. Something that created itself from nothing and continued to function without any apparent design or maintenance. "So when they saw me," Danny said slowly, "it was like seeing something impossible." "Not impossible," Clicks corrected. "Improbable. A body that builds itself, heals itself, regulates itself, all without a single circuit or wire. To us, you are a miracle walking around complaining about back pain and missing towels." Danny laughed despite himself. "When you put it that way, I guess I can see why everyone is so interested." "Interested does not begin to describe it," Clicks said. "The Valorian Science Council has classified humans as a priority research subject. They want to understand how your biology works, how you evolved, how you survive in conditions that should kill you. And right now, you are the only human they have access to." Danny felt a chill run down his spine. "That sounds like they want to study me." "They do. But Commander Zethis has made it clear that you are not to be treated like a specimen. You are a sentient being with rights and dignity, and any research involving you must be voluntary." That was some comfort, at least. Danny trusted Commander Zethis to protect him from the more aggressive scientists. but he could not shake the feeling that his life had changed forever because of one stupid morning and one broken door. The next few days proved him right. The research team that had arrived to inspect the communication arrays refused to leave. More teams followed, filling the station with Valorians who seemed to have no purpose except to watch Danny do ordinary things. They watched him eat breakfast. They watched him exercise in the small gym he had set up in an unused cargo bay. They watched him work at his console, their optical sensors tracking the movement of his fingers across the keyboard. They even watched him sleep, standing outside his door and listening to the sound of his breathing through the metal walls. Danny complained to Commander Zethis, who issued orders limiting the scientists to specific areas of the station. But the orders did little good. The Valorians were experts at finding ways around restrictions, and Danny still felt eyes on him everywhere he went. One evening, he was sitting alone in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars, when Communications Officer Lysa approached him. She was one of the three who had seen him that first morning, and Danny felt his face grow warm at the memory. "May I sit with you?" Lysa asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Danny nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Lysa settled into the chair, her chrome body reflecting the distant starlight. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. They just sat there, looking out at the infinite darkness together. "I want to apologize," Lysa finally said, "for that morning and for everything that has happened since. We did not mean to cause you distress." "I know," Danny replied. "It was an accident. The door malfunctioned." "Yes, but what happened afterward was not an accident. We could have kept the incident to ourselves. Instead, we filed reports, discussed it with colleagues, transmitted data to the Science Council. We turned a private moment into a public spectacle, and for that, I am sorry." Danny looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "Why did you do it? Why tell everyone?" Lysa's optical sensors dimmed slightly, a sign of deep thought among Valorians. "Because we could not help ourselves. What we saw that morning was something we had never experienced before. Your body, Danny, it was so different from anything in our databases. The softness of your skin, the warmth radiating from your form, the way everything moved together as one unified system. We had to share it. We had to make others understand. Understand what? That biological life is not just data and specifications. It is something real, something beautiful, something that cannot be fully captured by sensors or scans. You have to see it to believe it." Lysa paused. "We had to see you to believe you." Danny did not know what to say to that. He had spent his whole life in a body he took for granted, never thinking about the millions of processes happening inside him every second. But to the Valorians, those processes were wonders beyond imagination. "Thank you for telling me," he said finally. "It helps to know you were not just making fun of me." "Making fun?" Lysa sounded confused. "Why would we do that?" "Because on Earth, being seen naked is usually embarrassing. People laugh about it, make jokes, share stories at parties." Lysa's optical sensors brightened with what might have been surprise. "That seems strange. Why would anyone laugh at something so remarkable?" Danny smiled for the first time in days. "I'm starting to wonder that myself." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past the window. And for just a moment, Danny forgot about the scientists and the reports and the endless observation. He was just a human, sitting with a friend, appreciating the simple beauty of the universe. It was a good feeling. He hoped it would last. The message from the High Valorian Council arrived 3 weeks after the incident. Danny read it twice, then read it again, certain that he must be misunderstanding something. But the words remained the same, no matter how many times he looked at them. The council wanted to meet him. Not through a video call or a written report, but in person. They were sending a ship to bring him to the central Valorian hub, the seat of their entire civilization, where 12 of the oldest and most powerful Valorians in existence would ask him questions about his species. Danny showed the message to Commander Zethus, hoping the commander would tell him it was some kind of mistake. "It is not a mistake," Zethus confirmed. "The Council has reviewed all the data from the incident, and they have decided that speaking with you directly is necessary for their research." "But I'm not a scientist," Danny protested. "I do not know anything about human biology beyond what they taught us in school. I cannot explain how my body works." "They do not want explanations, Lieutenant Cole. They want observations. They want to see you, hear you, experience your presence in a way that data files cannot provide." Danny felt sick to his stomach. "And if I refuse to go?" Zethus was quiet for a moment. "The Council's requests are not usually refused. However, you are not a Valorian citizen, so they cannot compel you to attend. If you truly do not wish to go, I can send a message explaining your position." Danny thought about it. Part of him wanted to refuse, to stay here on the station where things were at least somewhat familiar. But another part of him was curious. The High Valorian Council was legendary. They had guided Valorian civilization for thousands of years, making decisions that shaped the entire galaxy. And they wanted to meet him because of something as stupid as a broken door and a forgotten towel. "What would happen if I did go?" Danny asked. "You would be treated as an honored guest," Zethus replied. "The Council has protocols for receiving visitors from other species. You would be given comfortable quarters, access to all facilities, and protection from any who might seek to study you without your consent. And after the meeting, you would return here, and life would continue as before. Or perhaps not as before. The Council has the power to change many things. If they decide that humans deserve special recognition or protection, that decision would affect your entire species." Danny sat with this information for a long time. He was just one person, an ordinary human who had ended up in an extraordinary situation. But maybe that was exactly what made him valuable. He was not a politician or a diplomat or a scientist. He was just a guy who took showers and ate food and slept at night. And somehow, that ordinariness had captured the attention of an entire civilization. "Okay," Danny said finally. "I will go." The journey to the central Valorian hub took 5 days. Danny spent most of that time alone in his cabin on the transport ship, preparing himself for whatever was coming. He practiced answers to questions he imagined the Council might ask. He read everything he could find about human biology in the ship's database. He even tried meditating, though he gave that up after falling asleep twice. When the ship finally arrived at the hub, Danny felt his breath catch in his throat. The central Valorian hub was not a station or a planet. It was a structure so large that it defied comprehension. A sphere of gleaming metal and light that hung in the darkness of space like a second sun. Millions of Valorians lived and worked there, connected to each other and to the vast network of information that powered their civilization. A Paha delegation met Danny at the docking port. They led him through corridors that seemed to go on forever, past chambers filled with machines he could not identify and Valorians who stopped to stare at him as he passed. By the time they reached the council chamber, Danny felt like he had walked halfway around the world. The chamber itself was circular, with high walls that curved up to a domed ceiling made of transparent material. Through that ceiling, Danny could see the stars of 1,000 different systems, each one representing a world that the Valorians had visited or influenced in some way. 12 Valorians sat in a semicircle at the center of the room. They were larger than any Valorians Danny had seen before, their chrome bodies polished to a mirror shine that reflected the starlight from above. Their optical sensors glowed with colors Danny had never seen, shifting through spectrums that human eyes could barely perceive. Danny walked forward until he stood in the center of the semicircle. His heart was pounding, and his palms were wet with sweat. He hoped the council could not tell how nervous he was. The eldest council member, a massive Valorian whose body was covered in intricate engravings, spoke first. "Lieutenant Danny Cole of Earth, we are the High Valorian Council. We have summoned you here to discuss a matter of great importance to our civilization." Danny swallowed hard. "I am honored to be here, council members, though I am not sure I can provide whatever answers you are looking for." "We are not looking for answers," another council member said. This one was smaller than the others, with a voice that sounded almost musical. "We are looking for understanding." A third council member leaned forward, their optical sensors focusing on Danny with intense concentration. "We have observed your species for 2 centuries. We have studied your history, your culture, your technology. We believed we understood what humans were. We believed you were fragile creatures, limited by your biology, destined to remain minor players in the galactic community." Danny felt a flash of defensiveness rise in his chest, but he kept his mouth shut. "We were wrong," the council member continued. "The incident on Relay Station 7 showed us something we had never seen before. A human body, unshielded and unprotected, standing in an environment that should have been hostile to biological life. And you were not struggling or suffering. You were simply existing, as naturally as we exist in this chamber right now." The eldest council member spoke again. "Your skin is not armor, yet it protects you. Your muscles have no motors, yet they move with precision and power. Your blood carries no coolant, yet it regulates your temperature. Your entire being is held together by processes so complex that even our most advanced algorithms cannot fully model them." Danny did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as complex. Compared to the Valorians, with their quantum processors and perfect metal bodies, he had always felt primitive and simple. "May I ask a question?" Danny said. The council members exchanged glances. "You may," the eldest replied. "Why does any of this matter to you? You are so far beyond us in technology and power. Why do you care what a human body looks like without clothes on?" Silence fell over the chamber. The council members looked at each other again, communicating in ways that Danny could not perceive. Finally, the musical-voiced one answered. "Because we built ourselves, Danny Cole. Every part of our bodies was designed by minds like our own. We know exactly what we are and why we are. There is no mystery in our existence, no wonder, no discovery." Another council member continued the thought. "But you were not built. You emerged. You grew from a single cell into a thinking, feeling being without any design or intention. You are proof that the universe can create wonders all on its own, without engineers or blueprints." The eldest council member rose from their seat and walked toward Danny. Up close, the ancient Valorian was even more impressive, their body humming with power that Danny could feel in his bones. "We have conquered stars. Danny Cole, we have built machines that can think and feel and dream. We have unlocked secrets of physics that most species will never comprehend. But we cannot create what you are. We cannot build a being that builds itself." The council member reached out and placed a cold metal hand on Danny's shoulder. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. "You are the thing we cannot make. You are the mystery we cannot solve. And that makes you the most precious thing in this galaxy." Danny stood there, feeling the weight of those words settle into his chest. He had come here expecting questions and examinations and cold scientific curiosity. Instead, he had found something else entirely. He had found respect. Danny returned to Relay Station 7 as a different person than the one who had left. The transport ship docked at the same port he had departed from, but everything felt strange and new. Like he was seeing the station for the first time. Commander Zethus met him at the docking bay. along with Clix, Lysa, and a dozen other Valorians who had become his friends over the past months. They stood in a line, their chrome bodies gleaming under the overhead lights. Their optical sensors focused on him with an intensity that would have made him uncomfortable before his trip. Now, Danny understood that intensity. It was not judgment or curiosity or even scientific interest. It was something closer to admiration. "Welcome back, Lieutenant Cole," Commander Zethus said. "I trust your meeting with the Council went well?" Danny smiled. "It went better than I expected. They had a lot of questions, but they also had a lot of things to say. Things I never thought I would hear from anyone, let alone the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Council has already transmitted their decision to all Valorian systems," Zethus replied. "Humans have been classified as a protected species of extraordinary interest. Your kind will receive special consideration in all future interactions with our civilization." Danny blinked in surprise. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means that human safety and well-being are now priorities for every Valorian in existence. It means that your species will have access to resources and technology that were previously restricted. It means that we will work to understand and support humanity, rather than simply observing from a distance." Danny felt something warm spread through his chest. The Council had not just listened to him. They had taken action based on what they learned. One embarrassing morning had somehow led to this moment, to a decision that would affect every human in the galaxy. "I do not know what to say," Danny admitted. "I was just a guy who forgot his towel. I did not mean to change anything." Clix stepped forward, their metal body making soft clicking sounds as they moved. "That is what makes you special, Danny. You did not try to impress anyone. You did not put on a performance or give a speech. You just existed, and that existence was enough to change everything." The other Valorians murmured in agreement, their voices blending together in a sound that was almost like music. Danny looked at them, these beings of metal and light who had once seemed so foreign and cold. Now they felt like family. "I learned something on the hub," Danny said slowly. "Something that the Council helped me understand. What is that?" Lysa asked. "All my life, I took my body for granted. I complained about aches and pains and getting tired and needing to eat and sleep. I thought of myself as limited, as less than perfect. But being here, surrounded by beings who would give anything to be what I am, I realized something important." Danny paused, gathering his thoughts. "I am not limited. I am alive. Every breath I take, every beat of my heart, every thought that passes through my mind is a miracle that the universe created without any help from engineers or designers. I am billions of years of evolution wrapped in skin, walking around and talking and feeling things that no machine will ever truly understand." He looked at Commander Zethus, meeting those glowing optical sensors with confidence he had never felt before. "You built yourselves, Commander. You made yourselves strong and fast and nearly immortal. But you can never build what I am. You can never create a being that grows from nothing, that heals itself, that experiences the universe in the way that I do. And that is not your weakness. It is just the truth of what we are, both of us. Two different kinds of miracles trying to understand each other." Silence filled the docking bay. The Valorians stood perfectly still, processing his words. Then Commander Zethus did something that Danny had never seen before. The commander bowed, lowering their chrome head in a gesture of deep respect. "Well spoken, Lieutenant Cole. You have given us much to consider." The other Valorians followed suit, each of them bowing in turn. Danny felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, though he tried to blink them away. Crying in front of a bunch of robots after giving an emotional speech seemed like exactly the kind of thing that would end up in another report. The days that followed were different from anything Danny had experienced before. The constant observation stopped, replaced by genuine conversations and shared experiences. The scientists who had treated him like a specimen now treated him like a colleague, asking questions because they wanted to understand, not because they wanted to collect data. Danny started giving informal talks in the station's common areas, explaining human biology and culture to any Valorian who wanted to listen. He showed them how humans ate and slept and exercised. He explained the purpose of laughter and tears and all the strange ways that human bodies expressed emotion. He even let a few of them touch his skin, though only after establishing very clear boundaries about what was appropriate. The Valorians were endlessly fascinated. They asked questions that no human had ever thought to ask, questions that made Danny see himself in completely new ways. Why did his hair grow but his eyes stay the same size? How did his body know when to feel hungry or tired? What did it feel like to dream? Danny did not have answers to all their questions, but that was okay. The questions themselves were valuable, reminders of how strange and wonderful it was to be a biological being in a universe full of machines. One evening, Danny found himself back in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars with Commander Zethus beside him. They had developed an unlikely friendship over the past weeks, united by their shared experience of that embarrassing morning that had started everything. "I never thanked you," Danny said quietly. "Thank me for what?" Zethus asked. "For protecting me. For making sure the scientists did not treat me like a lab experiment. For helping me understand what this all meant." Zethus made a soft humming sound. "You do not need to thank me, Danny. You taught me something that I had forgotten after thousands of years of existence." "What is that?" "That there are still wonders in this universe that I have not seen. That there are miracles I cannot build or buy or command. That the most extraordinary things are sometimes the simplest, and that they have been right in front of me all along." Danny smiled. "You know, where I come from, getting caught naked is usually the worst thing that can happen to a person. And now?" Danny laughed, a sound that made the commander's optical sensors brighten with interest. "Now I think it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past the window. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were going about their lives, eating and sleeping and working and playing, never knowing that an entire civilization of robots thought they were the most amazing things in the universe. Danny thought about sending a message home, telling his friends and family about everything that had happened, but he decided against it. Some stories were too big to fit in a message, too strange to explain to people who had not lived through them. Instead, he just sat there with his robot friend, appreciating the simple wonder of being alive. The universe was vast and old and full of mysteries. But for one ordinary human on one small station in the middle of nowhere, the biggest mystery had finally been solved. He was not ordinary at all. He never had been. He was a miracle, and it had taken a broken door and a missing towel to help him see it. The end.